Good morning, welcome to CATEX-TV. My name is Frank Fortunato. This is a live broadcast from Princeton, New Jersey. Today is Wednesday, September 15th, 2010. It's 11:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time in the U.S., 4:30 p.m. in London. In Monte Carlo, it's 5:30 p.m. and in Mexico City, 10:30 in the morning. If you need to reach us during the broadcast, you can phone in toll-free at 1-866-67-CATEX. Overseas, our AOL instant mail address is CATEX-TV. On this date 2 years ago, Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy, the largest bankruptcy in American history. Birthdays: Tommy Lee Jones, the actor, is 64, and Britain's Prince Harry is 26. A lot of economic news today. In Japan and Tokyo, the Japanese central bank is buying yen like mad, desperately trying to prop up the price of the yen, which they've succeeded in doing. It's increased sharply against the dollar. Obviously, this is being pressured by the Japanese export community, on whose lifeblood economically the country depends. Now we'll go to our main story. In the U.S., the main story now is this picture. Let's look at this. This is the trifecta. On the left, all the way to the west, you have Carl. In the middle is Igor, and all the way to the east is Julia. Carl sort of came out of nowhere, and we were following it for the past few days as a tropical depression, but as you see now, its path is going to take it over the Yucatan Peninsula, back out over the very warm waters, and then back into central Mexico. The storm is packing a punch now of about 65, 70 miles per hour. There is some concern for some of the oil rigs, the Pemex rigs, just north of the Yucatan Peninsula, but they're hoping that the storm will be weakened severely by its exposure over land. The main thing it is going to do is put a damper over Mexico's bicentennial anniversary, the 200-year anniversary of the independence from Spain. Let's look at Julia now. Julia is the one all the way to the east. This has now popped up to a Category 4 storm. It's got winds of about 135 miles per hour. You can see right now the tracking, you can't really tell, but it looks as if it's going to brush to the north of Bermuda. Presumably what will happen at that point is it will curve to the north. The one that Bermuda is really worried about is Igor. Let's look at that one. Igor is weakened a little bit. It's down now to 145 miles per hour. It's expected to make its turn to the north. The Bermuda media is warning of a bit of a hurricane watch, but people don't seem to be too concerned. They believe it's going to brush past the island, between the island and the U.S. coast, so it'll be coming to the west of the island. But obviously we'll keep our eyes on all of that. There's some news coming from Monte Carlo. SCOR of France apparently is in the very late stages of an application to launch a Lloyd's syndicate for a start next year. The Insurance Insider is saying this. SCOR's startup business plan is set to be considered by the Lloyd's Franchise Board. SCOR has identified former Liberty Syndicate's Director of Underwriting Tom Corfield as the active underwriter. The new syndicate hopes to have a first-year capacity in the region of about £70 million. It's thought that the syndicate will target a composite book of business, and it's going to start up on 1/1. This will give the French insurer a permanent presence on Lime Street. According to other sources, former Quanta Europe executives Richard Harris and John Byrne will join Corfield. The managing agency turnkey operations are going to be provided to SCOR's syndicate by Whittington. SCOR had no comment. AM Best came out with a study indicating that U.S. property and casualty insurance can expect, they think the industry will continue to release reserves over the balance of this year and all of next year, and this could present a concern. Best is saying that the industry's core undiscounted reserves right now are slightly redundant by about $2 billion. However, they say that they expect the industry to continue to release reserves this year and next, possibly slowing down the release rate. Best says that these ongoing reserve releases will continue to boost calendar year operating results. That's, of course, why people do it. But they will also have a dangerous effect on the adequacy of the underlying loss and loss adjustment expense reserves. They go on to say, with reserve releases expected to continue for the next 18 months, these deficiencies will increase. The core undiscounted reserves will go from redundant to an inadequate reserve position. Interestingly then, that barring any catastrophe, i.e. any rate increase relief, what Best is predicting is that the industry is going to shift from a reserve positive status right now to a reserve negative status by the end of next year. So you can be sure that this was something that was discussed in the south of France and will be discussed a month from now in Baden-Baden. Reserves are something that have to be maintained. People have seen that over the years. Big problems at Deutsche Telekom. Their CEO, René Obermann, apparently is one of 8 people being investigated in a suspected bribery case in its Eastern European operations. Deutsche Telekom's top lawyer, Manfred Balz, did say, though, that the CEO was not even the target of an American investigation that led to searches in Germany. The CEO was apparently, according to the attorney, only being questioned as a witness in the American probe. Apparently, Obermann's home was searched by prosecutors in Germany, and documents were confiscated. A source close to Deutsche Telekom has confirmed this. The attorney said that the case centered on suspicions that Deutsche Telekom bribes flowed to politicians and officials in the 2 Balkan countries of Albania and Macedonia. This despite the fact that there's a strict Deutsche Telekom prohibition against paying bribes. The CEO is accused of approving dividend payments to Macedonia's Mactel, which is a unit of Telecom's Hungarian subsidiary, Magyar Telekom, back in 2005 on the condition that the Macedonian telecom market not be opened up to any other competitors. According to the company's attorney, Mr. Balz, we are engaged from Croatia to Greece, and it is well known that there are various levels of corruption there. It's clear that this region needs heightened management attention, especially in the compliance area. Mactel's spokesperson refused to comment. Well, here's an interesting story. You had to parse through this closely. The headline, of course, is that Royal Caribbean has reached a settlement with the family of a man who disappeared on his honeymoon somewhere near Turkey in 2005. The man's name was George Smith IV. However, after reading it closely, what's happened is that Royal Caribbean has increased the amount that was paid out in the settlement from $1.1 million to $1.3 million. And in fact, what happened is that the settlement proportions were divided a little bit more favorably in favor of the dead man's parents and a little bit less favorably in favor of the dead man's widow. The dead man's widow apparently agreed to the earlier settlement in which she received $1.1 million, according to the family of the man, the dead man's parents, in order to keep quiet certain embarrassing details about herself. Some of the embarrassing details that have been found is that on their honeymoon, she was found sleeping in the corridor on the other side of the ship on the night that the husband disappeared. The couple was seen to be carousing around the ship, drinking and partying. That's pretty typical behavior on a cruise ship, and one would also think also on the honeymoon. However, there is a little bit of smoke here, and when there's smoke, there's usually fire. But the family says that they have come to a settlement. Part of the settlement includes the turning over to the dead man's family by Royal Caribbean of all of the evidence that they accumulated, including from security cameras, witness statements, and the like. There's also an ongoing FBI criminal investigation that remains in progress. The stock market in New York is up about 25 points right now. We'll go to a word from our sponsors.
for peace.
As you know, we've been tracking the story in San Bruno, just south of San Francisco, where the gas line exploded. And before I read this story, I'm reminded of a situation that existed in Elizabeth, New Jersey, not terribly far from us, about 10 years ago, when during the nighttime, about 2 o'clock in the morning, an apartment complex that was built upon a transcontinental gas pipeline blew up during the night. The pipeline just exploded almost spontaneously, and one of the comments from one of the residents who was saved said, "I thought it was a meteor that hit the complex." The first responders who came into San Bruno on Thursday night feared the worst. They came in and they heard a high-pitched screaming that they thought was a jet engine that came from the exhaust coming from the broken line. They thought a jetliner had gone down from nearby San Francisco International Airport. The first call came in to them at 6:12 p.m. A report of a second explosion coming out of South San Francisco, which was unrelated but nearby, made them think that they were dealing with a terrorist situation. It was not until 20 minutes into fighting the fire that authorities at San Francisco International Airport were able to confirm that no aircraft were missing and the firefighters were not dealing with a plane crash. They still, however, could not determine the source of the fireball because of the incredible heat. They also found that they did not have enough water, no water pressure in the area to be able to fight the fire. They hooked up the engines to fire hydrants in the neighborhood and discovered that they were dry. They then had to run approximately 3/4 of a mile of fire hose to connect to neighborhoods in the Rollingwood and Crestmore section before they were finally able to begin to attack the fire. Citizens helped firefighters drag those fire line hoses. What a mess. And we reported yesterday that there are thousands and thousands of miles of aging gas pipelines running underneath now very heavily populated areas in the United States. Well, you always see these explosives and things on news reports being used by the military, and maybe sometimes it would pay to stop and wonder where these darn things are made. There are, in fact, decoy flares that are dropped from B-52 jets in order to divert heat-seeking missiles. Some of these flares are made by the Kilgore Flare Company in Memphis, Tennessee. Well, there was an explosion and a flash fire yesterday afternoon at this plant, injured 6 of the employees, 3 of them critically. The fire burned so hot that the Memphis Police Department realized there was nothing they could do. They just cordoned it off, waiting for other explosions, and let the fire burn out. This morning, the reports are indicating severe, if not total, damage there. Off the island of Kos in Greece, tourists were hurt when a catamaran crashed into a jetty. Most of the tourists on the Turkish Aegean